The phone rang at midnight. Not unusual in our house. I work the night shift at Detroit Metro Logistics, managing freight schedules while the rest of the world sleeps. What was unusual was my wife answering it in the bathroom, door locked, voice dropping to whispers. "Evan Mercer here," I muttered to myself, settling into my home office chair. 43 years old, former Treasury Department financial crimes investigator, current logistics manager, and apparently married to a woman who takes mysterious calls in the can. Aria had been acting strange for months. Late meetings, hushed phone conversations, new clothes that cost more than my weekly paycheck. She claimed it was all part of her meteoric rise at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. I thought she meant climbing the ladder in the garage. Turns out she had other ladders in mind. Through the thin walls of our suburban Detroit ranch house, I could hear fragments of her conversation. Something about covering for Miles and the promotion is sealed. Miles Heron, her boss. 50 years old, drives a classic BMW, married with 2 kids, and apparently the reason my wife locks herself in the bathroom at midnight. I grabbed my voice recorder from the desk drawer. Old habits from my Treasury days. If you want to catch financial criminals, you document everything. If you want to catch a cheating wife, same principle applies. The bathroom door creaked open. Aria padded back to bed, probably thinking I was asleep in my office chair. She was half right. I was in my office chair, but wide awake and planning my next move. "Morning, honey," she chirped the next day, pouring coffee like she hadn't been whispering sweet nothings to her boss 12 hours earlier. "Another late night for you?" "Just the usual freight schedules," I replied, watching her apply lipstick with unusual care. "Big day at the office?" "Board presentation. Miles thinks I'm ready for the senior marketing director position." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Might be late tonight. Team dinner to celebrate." Team dinner. Right. I'd heard that excuse before. After she left, I searched her purse, found a key to the Riverside corporate apartments and a receipt from Romano's. $400 for dinner for 2, signed A&M. Aria and Miles. How romantic. My brother Nate called around noon. "You sound like garbage, Evan. What's eating you?" My wife, apparently by her boss. I filled him in on the midnight bathroom conferences and mysterious dinner receipts. "Want me to tail her? I've got nothing but time and a pickup truck." Nate owned a bar called The Wrench, catering to auto workers and night shift guys like me. He was loyal, loud, and had zero filter. Perfect for surveillance work. Not yet. I need more evidence before I make my move. That evening, I installed the voice recorder in the bathroom cabinet, tucked behind her expensive face creams. If Aria wanted to conduct business in there, I'd make sure it was recorded for posterity. The wait was worth it. At 11:47 p.m., the bathroom door locked again. This time, I got every word. "Miles, I handled the Caitlin situation like you asked," Aria whispered. "She won't be filing any more complaints with HR. I made it clear that junior associates who make waves don't get promoted." My stomach turned. Caitlin was a sweet kid. Maybe 25, fresh out of college. I'd met her at the company picnic. What had Miles done to her? "The Christmas party is perfect timing," Aria continued. "After I get the Rising Leader Award, we can announce our new partnership arrangement. Your wife will be so busy with her charity committees, she'll never notice." Partnership arrangement. That was a creative way to describe adultery. "I love how you handle the difficult conversations, baby. That's why you're getting the promotion. You know how to keep people quiet." The call ended. I sat in my office chair, staring at the voice recorder, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just about an affair. Aria was helping Miles cover up harassment, silencing victims, climbing the corporate ladder on the backs of women like Caitlin. 15 years at Treasury taught me that the best revenge isn't violence, it's exposure. You want to destroy someone? Show the world who they really are. The company Christmas party was in 2 weeks. Aria would receive her Rising Leader Award in front of 200 executives, board members, and their spouses. She wanted a spotlight? I'd give her one she'd never forget. I spent the next morning researching the hotel's AV system. The Riverside Grand was old school, built in the 1980s, renovated but still using analog sound equipment. Easy to hack if you knew what you were doing. Lucky for me, Treasury trained us on electronic surveillance. "Evan, you're smiling," Nate observed when I stopped by the Wrench that afternoon. "That's either really good news or really bad news for someone. Depends on your perspective. For me, it's Christmas morning. For Aria and Miles, it's about to be the worst holiday season of their lives." I ordered a beer and pulled out my phone. "I need a favor. Know anyone who works at the Riverside Grand?" "My cousin Danny runs sound for their events." "Why?" Because I'm about to give the performance of a lifetime, and I need the right audience. The Riverside Grand's Christmas party was Pinnacle Marketing's biggest event of the year. 200 of Detroit's corporate elite gathered to celebrate another year of climbing over each other for profit margins and corner offices. Aria had been preparing for weeks, buying a new dress, practicing her acceptance speech for the Rising Leader Award. "You're coming, right?" she asked, adjusting her earrings in the bedroom mirror. "Miles specifically requested that spouses attend. He wants to meet you." "I'll bet he does." "Wouldn't miss it for the world." She kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark I didn't bother wiping off. "I'm so nervous about the speech. This promotion means everything to me." "I know it does." More than she realized. The ballroom was decorated like a winter wonderland. White lights, silver trees, enough fake snow to bury a small car. Aria worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and laughing at jokes that probably weren't funny. Miles held court near the bar, surrounded by junior executives hanging on his every word. He was exactly what I expected. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of smile that sold cars and ruined lives. His wife stood beside him, a tired-looking woman in her 40s who kept checking her phone. "You must be Evan," Miles said when Aria dragged me over for introductions. "I've heard so much about you. Logistics, right? Must be fascinating work." His handshake was firm, his eyes cold. He was sizing me up, probably wondering how much I knew. The answer was everything, but I kept my expression neutral. "It has its moments. Congratulations on your success with Aria. She speaks very highly of your mentorship." "She's a remarkable woman, very dedicated to her career advancement." Aria blushed. "Miles has been such an inspiration. He's taught me so much about handling difficult situations." "I'm sure he has." The evening proceeded according to script. Dinner, speeches from the board, awards for various achievements. Finally, the moment I'd been waiting for. Aria's Rising Leader Award. She walked to the podium, radiant in her new dress, holding the crystal trophy like it was the Holy Grail. The applause was polite but genuine. She was popular with her colleagues, which made what I was about to do even more devastating. "Thank you so much for this incredible honor," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "When I joined Pinnacle 5 years ago, I never imagined I'd be standing here today. But with the right guidance and mentorship, amazing things are possible." I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Nate's cousin Danny. "Now. I especially want to thank my supervisor, Miles Heron, for believing in me and showing me what it takes to succeed in this competitive industry. He's taught me that sometimes you have to make difficult choices, but the rewards are worth it." The sound system crackled. Aria paused, looking confused. Then her own voice filled the ballroom, crystal clear through the speakers. "Miles, I handled the Caitlin situation like you asked. She won't be filing any more complaints with HR. I made it clear that junior associates who make waves don't get promoted." The room went silent. 200 people stared at the podium where Aria stood frozen, her face turning the color of the fake snow. But the recording wasn't finished. "The Christmas party is perfect timing. After I get the Rising Leader Award, we can announce our new partnership arrangement. Your wife will be so busy with her charity committees she'll never notice." Miles's wife dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing through the silent ballroom like a gunshot. "I love how you handle the difficult conversations, baby. That's why you're getting the promotion. You know how to keep people quiet." The recording ended. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Board members started shouting. Miles's wife screamed something about "that witch" and launched herself toward the podium. Security guards appeared from nowhere, trying to maintain order. Aria stood at the microphone, tears streaming down her face, still holding her trophy. "This is fake," she stammered. "Someone doctored this recording. This isn't real." But the damage was done. The board members were already huddling in a corner, their faces grim. The HR manager looked like she was going to vomit. Several junior executives were recording everything on their phones. Miles tried to slip out the back, but Nate appeared in the doorway, blocking his exit. My brother had positioned himself perfectly, trapping Miles in the ballroom with 200 witnesses to his humiliation. "Going somewhere, partner?" Nate asked loudly. "Thought you might want to stick around for the after-party." Miles' wife reached the podium and slapped Aria hard enough to knock the trophy from her hands. It hit the floor and shattered, crystal fragments scattering like her career prospects. 23 years of marriage," she screamed. 23 years, and you throw it away for this corporate climber?" "Mrs. Heron, please," the hotel manager pleaded, trying to restore order. But there was no controlling this situation. The story was already spreading through social media. Your Rising Leader Falls was trending within the hour. I found Aria in the hotel lobby, sitting alone on a marble bench. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her dress was torn where Mrs. Heron had grabbed her, and she'd lost one earring in the scuffle. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered. "I didn't do anything. I just played back your own words. You recorded me, in our own house. That's illegal." "Actually, it's not. Michigan is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows about the recording, it's perfectly legal. I should know. I spent 15 years investigating financial crimes." She looked up at me with genuine surprise. "You were never just a logistics manager." "No, I wasn't. I was a treasury agent who specialized in catching people who thought they were smarter than the system, people like you and Miles." The hotel lobby was emptying out. The party was over, in more ways than one. Tomorrow, the real consequences would begin. "What happens now?" Aria asked. "Now? Now you find out what it's like to lose everything you thought you'd earned. Just like Caitlin did. Just like all the other women Miles harassed while you helped cover it up." I walked away, leaving her sitting alone in the lobby of the Riverside Grand, surrounded by the wreckage of her ambitions. The aftermath of the Christmas party hit like a Detroit blizzard. Fast, brutal, and impossible to ignore. By Monday morning, the recording had gone viral. Local news stations picked up the story. The Detroit Free Press ran a front-page article titled, "Corporate Culture Under Fire After Holiday Party Scandal." I sat in my office at Detroit Metro Logistics, watching the coverage on my laptop while managing freight schedules. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters, but I ignored them all. The recording spoke for itself. Aria hadn't come home Sunday night. Or Monday night. I assumed she was staying at her mother's house, licking her wounds and plotting her next move. Fine by me. I needed time to prepare for the counterattack. Tuesday morning brought the news I'd been expecting. Miles Heron was suspended pending a board investigation. 3 more women had come forward with harassment complaints, emboldened by the public exposure. The company's stock price dropped 12% in 2 days. Caitlin called me Tuesday afternoon. "Mr. Mercer, this is Caitlin Reynolds from Pinnacle. I wanted to thank you." "You don't need to thank me. I just played a recording." "You gave me my voice back. I was so scared after Aria threatened me. I thought my career was over if I didn't stay quiet." "What exactly did she say to you?" "That Miles was untouchable. That junior associates who made trouble would be blacklisted throughout the industry. She showed me a list of other women who'd filed complaints and where they worked now. Retail, food service, nowhere near corporate marketing. She said I could join them, or I could shut up and focus on my actual job. The more I learned about Aria's role in this, the angrier I became. She wasn't just an affair partner. She was Miles's enforcer, silencing victims and protecting a predator. Wednesday brought the first legal papers. Aria's lawyer served me with a restraining order, claiming I'd violated her privacy and threatened her safety. The order was temporary, pending a hearing, but it barred me from the house for 72 hours. I called my own lawyer, Janet Morrison, a sharp woman I'd worked with during my treasury days. She laughed when I read her the restraining order. "This won't hold up. The recording was legal, and there's no evidence of threats. But it tells me Aria's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind that help us in divorce proceedings. Speaking of which, I assume you want to file?" "Already decided. I want her out of my house and out of my life." "Good. Michigan is a no-fault state, but adultery can affect property division and spousal support. With that recording, she won't get a dime." Thursday morning, I got a call from Detective Ray Toller, an old friend from my treasury days who'd moved to Detroit PD. "Evan, I need to ask you some questions about Sunday night. Aria Venton filed a complaint claiming you've been stalking and harassing her." "Ray, you know me. When have I ever stalked anyone?" "Never, which is why I'm giving you a heads up instead of showing up at your door with handcuffs. But she's got a lawyer, and they're pushing hard. Says you've been following her, recording her conversations, and making threats." I recorded one conversation in my own bathroom. As for following her, I've been working nights all week. Check my time card. "I will, but be careful, Evan. She's playing victim now, and the media loves that narrative." He was right. By Thursday afternoon, Aria had given an interview to Channel 7 News, portraying herself as the victim of an abusive husband who'd violated her privacy and destroyed her career out of jealousy. "I made one mistake," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I had feelings for someone I worked with. But that doesn't justify what my husband did. He humiliated me in front of 200 people, destroyed my reputation, and cost me my job, all because his ego couldn't handle my success." The interview made my stomach turn. She was good. I had to give her that. She managed to acknowledge the affair while making herself the victim and me the villain. No mention of Caitlin or the harassment cover-up. No acknowledgement of her role in silencing other women. But she'd made a tactical error. By giving the interview, she'd opened herself up to public scrutiny, and I had more recordings than just the bathroom conversation. Friday morning, I called Channel 7 and offered them an exclusive interview. I want to tell my side of the story, I told the producer, and I have evidence that will change how people see this situation. The interview was scheduled for Monday. That gave me the weekend to prepare my counterattack. Saturday, I drove to the Wrench to meet with Nate and plan my next moves. The bar was busy with the usual crowd of auto workers and night shift guys, all of whom had seen the news coverage. "You're famous, brother," Nate said, sliding a beer across the bar. "Half these guys think you're a hero. The other half think you're crazy." "What do you think?" "I think you're getting even. Nothing wrong with that, as long as you don't do anything stupid." "Define stupid." "Anything that gets you arrested before you finish the job." That evening, I returned to my house. The restraining order had expired, and I had work to do. I went through Aria's home office, collecting documents and evidence. She'd been sloppy, keeping printed emails and handwritten notes that detailed her activities with Miles. One file was particularly interesting, a list of women who'd filed harassment complaints against Miles over the past 5 years, along with notes about how each complaint had been resolved. Aria had helped orchestrate the cover-up of at least 8 separate incidents. I photographed everything and uploaded the files to a secure cloud server. If Aria wanted to play victim, I'd show the world who the real victims were. Sunday night, she came home. I was waiting in the living room, sitting in my chair with a beer and a folder full of documents. "The restraining order expired," I said before she could speak. "This is still my house. We need to talk." She looked exhausted, older than her 38 years. The stress was showing. "I'm listening." "I'll admit I made mistakes. The affair was wrong, and I'm sorry. But what you did was cruel and vindictive. You destroyed my career over a personal matter." "A personal matter?" "You helped a predator silence his victims. You threatened young women to protect your boyfriend's reputation. That's not personal, that's criminal." "I never threatened anyone." I opened the folder and pulled out her handwritten notes about Caitlin. Quote, "Made it clear to CR that junior associates who rock the boat don't advance. Showed her the Patterson file as an example. She understands the situation now." End quote. "Your handwriting, your signature, dated 3 weeks ago." Her face went pale. "You went through my private papers." "Your private papers were in my house. Everything here is marital property, subject to discovery and divorce proceedings." "Divorce?" She sat down heavily on the couch. "Evan, we can work this out. I'll end things with Miles. I'll find another job. We can start over." "No, we can't. You're not the woman I married. Maybe you never were. What do you want? Money? I'll give you half of everything." "I don't want your money. I want you gone." She started crying then, real tears this time, not the performance she'd given on television, but it was too late for tears. She'd made her choices, and now she'd live with the consequences. Monday morning, I sat across from Channel 7's morning anchor, the evidence folder on the table between us. The interview was being broadcast live, which meant Aria couldn't stop it or control the narrative. "Mr. Mercer, your wife has portrayed you as an abusive husband who violated her privacy out of jealousy. How do you respond to those allegations?" "I respond with facts." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. This is a list, in my wife's handwriting, of 8 women who filed harassment complaints against Miles Heron. Next to each name are notes about how the complaints were handled, meaning buried. The anchor leaned forward, reading the document on camera. "These are serious allegations. Do you have proof that your wife was involved in covering up harassment?" "I have her own notes detailing how she threatened junior employees to keep them quiet. I have recordings of her bragging about handling difficult situations. And I have testimony from victims who were intimidated into silence." The interview ran for 20 minutes. By the time it ended, the narrative had shifted completely. Aria wasn't the victim of an abusive husband. She was the accomplice of a corporate predator. The fallout was immediate and devastating. The board announced a full investigation into the harassment allegations. The FBI opened a preliminary inquiry into possible civil rights violations. 3 law firms announced they were filing a class action lawsuit on behalf of Miles's victims, and Aria's career in corporate marketing was over. No company would touch her now. She'd become toxic, unemployable, a liability no corporation could afford. I drove home that afternoon feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. Not happiness. This wasn't a happy situation, but the satisfaction of seeing justice served, of watching bullies face consequences for their actions. The house was empty when I arrived. Aria had packed her things and left. On the kitchen counter was a note. "You've destroyed everything we built together. I hope you're proud of yourself." I crumpled up the note and threw it away. Then I opened a beer, sat in my chair, and started planning my next move. Because this wasn't over. Miles Heron was still out there, probably plotting his comeback, and I wasn't finished with him yet. Miles Heron's suspension became permanent termination on a cold February morning. The board's investigation had uncovered a pattern of harassment spanning 12 years, with Aria's help in covering up complaints for at least 5 of those years. His golden parachute evaporated under the company's morality clause, costing him roughly $2 million in severance and benefits. I learned this from Caitlin, who'd been promoted to senior associate after 3 other women came forward with their stories. She called me at work, barely able to contain her excitement. "Mr. Mercer, they fired him. Not suspended, fired. And they're implementing new harassment reporting procedures. Anonymous hotlines, external investigators, the works." "That's great news, Caitlin. You should be proud. You helped make this happen." "No, you did. If you hadn't played that recording, none of us would have found the courage to speak up." Maybe she was right. But I hadn't done it for noble reasons. I'd done it because my wife had betrayed me, and I wanted her to pay. The fact that it helped other women was just a bonus. Aria had been staying at her mother's house in Grosse Pointe, a wealthy suburb where appearances mattered more than reality. Mrs. Eleanor Venton was a piece of work. Old money, social climber, the kind of woman who measured success by country club memberships and charity board positions. She called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice dripping with disdain. "Evan, we need to discuss this situation like civilized people." "What situation is that, Eleanor?" "Don't play dumb. You've humiliated my daughter publicly, destroyed her career, and ruined her reputation. All over a simple indiscretion." "A simple indiscretion?" She helped cover up harassment complaints. She threatened young women to protect a predator. "That's your interpretation. Aria was simply being loyal to her supervisor. In my day, we called that good work ethic." "In your day, women couldn't vote. Times change." The conversation went downhill from there. Eleanor threatened to sue me for defamation, claimed I'd violated wiretapping laws, and suggested I was mentally unstable. I let her rant for 10 minutes, then hung up. But Eleanor's call told me something important. Aria was planning a counterattack. She wasn't going to accept defeat quietly, which meant I needed to be prepared for whatever she threw at me. The divorce papers were served on a snowy Thursday morning. Janet Morrison had filed on grounds of adultery and irreconcilable differences, seeking full custody of our joint assets and no spousal support for Aria. "She'll fight it," Janet warned during our meeting. "Her lawyer is claiming emotional distress and seeking damages for invasion of privacy." "Can she win?" "Not likely. The recording was legal, and adultery is still adultery, even in a no-fault state, but she might try to drag it out, make it expensive and public." "Let her try. I've got more evidence than she knows about." That evidence came in handy sooner than expected. Aria's lawyer filed a motion claiming I'd been abusing her for years, using my law enforcement background to intimidate and control her. The motion included a psychological evaluation suggesting I suffered from narcissistic personality disorder with vindictive tendencies. Janet laughed when she read it. "They're desperate. This is a Hail Mary pass from someone who knows they're losing." What's our response? We bury them in facts. Phone records showing when she called Miles, credit card statements proving their affair. And the best part, I found something interesting in her employment contract. She handed me a document. Page 12, paragraph 4. Pinnacle has a morality clause for senior employees. Adultery with a supervisor can result in termination and forfeiture of unvested stock options. How much are we talking about? About $300,000. Money she was counting on for her future. The hearing was scheduled for March 15th. I spent the intervening weeks gathering more evidence and preparing for Aria's inevitable media campaign. She'd already given 2 more television interviews, portraying herself as a victim of domestic abuse and corporate retaliation, but her story kept changing. First, I was a jealous husband who couldn't handle her success. Then, I was an abusive controller who'd been tormenting her for years. Now I was a vindictive ex-cop who'd used illegal surveillance to destroy her career. The inconsistencies were adding up, and reporters were starting to notice. Channel 7 ran a follow-up story questioning her credibility, pointing out the contradictions in her various interviews. Meanwhile, Miles had gone to ground. His wife had filed for divorce, seeking half of everything and primary custody of their 2 children. He'd moved into a downtown apartment, reportedly drinking heavily and trying to find work in an industry that now viewed him as toxic. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The divorce hearing was brutal. Aria's lawyer tried to portray me as an obsessive stalker who had sabotaged his wife's career out of spite. But Janet came prepared with evidence that completely dismantled their story. Phone records showing hundreds of calls between Aria and Miles, often late at night, credit card statements proving expensive dinners and hotel stays, email exchanges discussing how to handle harassment complaints. And the recordings, not just the bathroom conversation, but 3 others I'd captured over the previous months. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, listened to everything with growing disgust. When Aria's lawyer finished his presentation, she leaned forward and spoke directly to my wife. Mrs. Venton, I've heard your claims about being a victim of abuse and harassment, but the evidence suggests you were an active participant in covering up workplace harassment. That doesn't excuse your husband's methods, but it certainly undermines your credibility as a victim. The judge granted the divorce on grounds of adultery. I kept the house, the retirement accounts, and the car. Aria got her personal belongings and half of our savings, about $20,000. No spousal support, no claim on my future earnings. Outside the courthouse, Aria confronted me one last time. You've destroyed my life over a mistake. I hope you can live with that. I can live with it just fine. Can you live with what you did to those women? She didn't answer. She just walked away, her mother's arm around her shoulders, both of them looking like they'd aged 10 years in 6 months. That evening, I sat in my house now, and cracked open a beer. The place felt different without Aria's presence. Quieter, cleaner, more honest. My phone rang. It was Caitlin. Mr. Mercer, I wanted to let you know. Miles Heron was arrested today. The FBI charged him with civil rights violations. Apparently using your position to coerce favors is a federal crime. What about Aria? She's not being charged, but she's been named as a witness. Her lawyer says she'll cooperate fully with the investigation. Of course she would. Aria always landed on her feet, always found a way to survive, but this time survival came at a cost. Her career was over, her reputation destroyed, her marriage finished. She'd traded everything for a few months with Miles Heron, and now she had nothing to show for it but legal bills and regret. I finished my beer and went to bed in my own house, in my own bed, for the first time in months. Tomorrow, I'd start rebuilding my life. Tonight, I'd sleep peacefully, knowing that justice had been served and the victims had found their voices. The night shift payback was complete. Spring came early to Detroit that year, melting away the snow and revealing the damage winter had done. Like my marriage, some things looked better covered up. Miles Heron's federal trial was set for June. The FBI had built a solid case, 8 victims willing to testify, documented evidence of quid pro quo harassment, and Aria's own notes detailing the cover-up conspiracy. His lawyer was already floating plea bargain options. Aria had found work at a small nonprofit in Ann Arbor, making about 1/3 of her former salary. The organization helped victims of domestic violence, which struck me as either deeply ironic or genuinely redemptive. I wasn't sure which. She'd moved into a studio apartment near the University of Michigan campus, driving a 10-year-old Honda instead of her former BMW lease. Eleanor had cut off financial support after Aria refused to fight harder in the divorce proceedings. I learned all this from Caitlin, who'd become something of a friend over the months. She'd been promoted again, now managing a team of junior associates and implementing the new harassment prevention protocols at Pinnacle. She looks different, Caitlin told me during one of our occasional coffee meetings. Older, sadder, like someone who finally understands what she lost. Do you feel sorry for her? Sometimes. But then I remember how scared I was when she threatened me, how helpless I felt. And I think about the other women who stayed quiet because of her. So no, I don't feel that sorry for her. Neither did I. Aria had made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. She'd chosen career advancement over integrity, chosen Miles over her marriage, chosen to silence victims rather than speak up for justice. The fact that those choices had cost her everything was poetic justice, not tragedy. My own life had settled into a comfortable routine. Work, home, occasional dinners with Nate at the Wrench. I'd started dating a forensic accountant named Lisa who laughed too loud at my jokes and shared my appreciation for justice served cold. You're different from my usual type, she told me after our 3rd date. Most guys I meet are either intimidated by my job or trying to impress me with their money. You just seem comfortable with yourself. I went through a period of self-discovery recently, learned some things about what matters and what doesn't. Your ex-wife? Among other things. Let's just say I'm better at recognizing red flags now. Lisa worked for the IRS, investigating tax fraud and corporate malfeasance. She understood the satisfaction of catching people who thought they were smarter than the system. We had that in common, along with a shared appreciation for evidence-based conclusions and long-term consequences. The trial began on a humid Monday in June. I wasn't called as a witness. My role had been limited to exposing the conspiracy, not participating in the harassment itself. But I attended the opening arguments, curious to see how the story would be told in a federal courtroom. Miles looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his expensive suits hung loose on his frame, and his silver hair had gone completely gray. Prison was a real possibility, and it showed in every line of his face. Aria testified on the third day. She wore a simple black dress and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper, detailing her role in covering up complaints and intimidating victims. The prosecutor treated her as a cooperating witness, not a co-conspirator, which probably saved her from criminal charges. "I was wrong," she said when asked about her actions. "I told myself I was being loyal to my supervisor, but I was really just protecting my own advancement. I silenced women who deserved to be heard, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." It sounded genuine. Maybe it was. People can change, learn from their mistakes, find redemption in their lowest moments. But watching her testify, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sympathy. She'd become irrelevant to my life, a character in a story that was already finished. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Miles was convicted on all counts: civil rights violations, abuse of power, conspiracy to obstruct justice. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay restitution to his victims. "Your actions represent a fundamental betrayal of trust," the judge said during sentencing. "You used your position of authority to exploit vulnerable employees, then conspired to cover up those crimes. The damage you've done extends far beyond your immediate victims to every woman trying to succeed in corporate America." 4 years wasn't enough, in my opinion, but it was something, and the civil lawsuits would probably cost him everything he had left. That evening, I drove to the Wrench to celebrate with Nate. The bar was crowded with the usual mix of auto workers and night shift guys, most of whom had followed the trial in the local news. "So it's really over?" Nate asked, sliding a beer across the bar. "It's over. Miles is going to prison, Aria's career is finished, and the victims got their day in court. Justice served. And you? How do you feel about it all?" I thought about that question while nursing my beer. How did I feel? Satisfied, certainly. Vindicated, absolutely. But also empty. Like I'd spent so much energy on revenge that I'd forgotten what came next. "I feel like I need to figure out what the rest of my life looks like," I said finally. "I've been so focused on making them pay for what they did, I haven't thought much about what I want to do now." "That's easy. You want to be happy. You want to find someone who deserves you. You want to build something better than what you had before." "When did you become a philosopher?" "When I started watching my little brother destroy his cheating wife and her scumbag boss." "You did good, Evan. You stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. That matters." Maybe he was right. Maybe this whole nightmare had been about more than personal revenge. Maybe it had been about justice, accountability, and giving victims their voices back. Or maybe I was just trying to make myself feel better about the satisfaction I'd felt watching Aria's world collapse. Either way, it was over. Miles was in prison, Aria was working for peanuts at a nonprofit, and I was free to build whatever life I wanted. The night shift payback had been completed, and the victims had found their justice. I finished my beer, said goodbye to Nate, and drove home to my house. My house now, free and clear. Tomorrow I'd call Lisa and see if she wanted to have dinner. Tonight I'd sleep peacefully in my own bed, knowing that sometimes the good guys actually win. The recording device was still in my desk drawer, a reminder of how everything had started, but I didn't need it anymore. The truth had been told, the consequences had been paid, and the victims had been heard. Justice, it turned out, was its own reward, even when it came at midnight, whispered in a bathroom, and served cold at a Christmas party. Some stains, as I'd told Aria that night in the rain, never wash out. But sometimes that's exactly what the world needs. Permanent reminders of what happens when people choose power over principle, advancement over integrity, and silence over truth. The night shift was over. It was time to start the day shift